Good morning to you and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Tuesday morning. Lovely to see you and thank you for joining us for our Bible reflection today. We're working our way, as you know, through the book of Proverbs. It's not a book I know well, but I'm learning a lot very fast. There's absolute treasure chest, isn't it? There's lots of good stuff in there. And today, my friends, we are in chapter 19. So here we go. Proverbs and chapter 19. Better the poor walking in integrity, the one perverse of speech who is a fool. Desire without knowledge is not good, and one who moves too hurriedly misses the way. One's own folly leads to ruin, yet the heart rages against the Lord. Wealth brings many friends, but the poor are left friendless. A false witness will not go unpunished, and a liar will not escape. Many seek the favour of the generous, and everyone is a friend to a giver of gifts. If the poor are hated even by their own kin, how much more are they shunned by their friends? When they call after them, they are not there. To get wisdom is to love oneself. To keep understanding is to prosper. A false witness will not go unpunished, and the liar will perish. It's not fitting for a fool to live in luxury, much less for a slave to rule over princes. Those with good sense are slow to anger, and it's their glory to overlook an offence. A king's anger is like the growling of a lion, but his favour is like a dew on the grass. A stupid child is ruin to a father, and a wife's quarrelling is a continual dripping of rain. House and wealth are inherited from parents, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Laziness brings on deep sleep. An idle person will suffer hunger. Those who keep the commandment will live. Those who are heedless of their ways will die. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord and will be repaid in full. Discipline your children while there's hope. Do not set your heart on their destruction. A violent-tempered person will pay the penalty. If you effect a rescue, you'll only have to do it again. Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom for the future. The human mind may devise many plans, but it's the purpose of the Lord that will be established. What is desirable in a person is loyalty, and it's better to be poor than a liar. The fear of the Lord is life indeed. Filled with it, one rests secure and suffers no harm. The lazy person buries a hand in the dish and will not even bring it back to the mouth. Strike a scoffer, and the simple will learn prudence. Reprove the intelligent, and they will gain knowledge. Those who do violence to their father and chase away their mother are children who cause shame and bring reproach. Cease straying, my child, from the words of knowledge, in order that you may hear instruction. A worthless witness mocks at justice, and the mouth of the wicked devours iniquity. Condemnation is ready for scoffers, and flogging for the backs of fools. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay. Interesting in this, it's starting to read just reading as a verse at a time, a bit like Solomon's words again. I want to say from the beginning, there are some proverbs in here which read kind of oddly to us today. So, for example, it talks about the poor in verse 7, and so on. And it talks about, they're being shamed by their friends, and that sort of stuff as well. And there are one or two verses here as well which kind of read a bit oddly with us. But I suppose I just want to make a general point about Bible study, which is that I'm not here to tell you everything there is to know about Proverbs chapter 19. To some extent, if I have you at the end wanting to go home and read it again, in a sense, that's what I'm kind of hoping to achieve. There are verses, you've got to remember this was written by best part of 3,000 years ago, and you can think about context. And I think the important thing is that we take these verses away and work on them ourselves, take them to heart and actually try and get some understanding with them. So if you come across a difficult verse, and there are one or two in here, I think the important thing is that we go away, we think about it, we reflect on it, and we ask God to help us with it. Because there are always going to be things that we don't know. In a sense, we'll find out some of them when we get to heaven. But that's just what I say from the beginning. That there are verses in the Bible which are difficult to understand, and there are difficult verses in the Bible that we can find difficult to take sometimes. But the important thing is to take them away and chew on them and reflect on them and read them again and find out more about them. And that way we get even closer into the Word of God. So that's what the challenge for today. But more than that, lots in verse here. In verse 1, of course, you've got the importance of integrity. Better the poor working in integrity than the one perverse of speech who has a fool. In other words, this message again and again and again through the book of Proverbs, that to be wise is better than to be rich. In verse 3, it talks a bit about how what people often do when things go wrong. And it shows in a sense that was ever so, that when people, one's own folly bring leads to ruin, yet the heart rages against the Lord. Isn't it interesting that when things go wrong in the world, even though the humanity often makes a mess of it, we're very keen to blame God, aren't we? Folly, as it says, folly leads to ruin, yet the heart rages against the Lord. I just think it's so ironic here, really. And it was obviously they were doing it 3,000 years ago. They make a mess of their lives and they blame God for it. And I've heard God blamed for all sorts of things over the years. But actually, we have to take some responsibility for ourselves as well. So when people do that today, 'twas ever so, they were doing it 3,000 years ago in the book of Proverbs. In verse 5 and verse 9, another message through the book of Proverbs, which is about the importance of truth and honesty and against perjury. It says here, verse 5, a false witness will not go unpunished and a liar will not escape. So it's the importance here of being truthful and about being honest. And other people may be dishonest around us, but the importance of keeping integrity. I was talking to somebody once who went to an interview and answered the questions honestly and openly and transparently, and then felt bad afterwards because they hadn't kind of played the game and hadn't said what they thought the person wanted to hear. And this is really about truth and honesty and about having integrity and the importance of saying, being transparent and saying what's right. So here is the importance here of verse 5 and in verse 9, and also the book of Proverbs about the importance of telling the truth. It should be simple, really, but the message comes through again and again and again. Then in verse 8, there's a lot of talk these days about being kind to yourself. And we all say, be kind to yourself. And we tend to think of that being, go and have a drink or a bar of chocolate or take yourself to a spa day or play golf or whatever it's going to be. But actually, in verse 8, he puts it rather differently. What verse is it? I think it's verse 8, isn't it? Sorry. Yeah, to get wisdom is to love oneself, and to keep understanding is to prosper. So the way to be kind to yourself is actually to gain wisdom. And take the message. If you want to be really kind to yourself, especially in the long run, the best way to do it is to actually gain wisdom too. Then in verse 11, there's a message here about the importance of, if you want to make friends, those with good sense are slow to anger, and it's their glory to overlook an offence. Again, I think we live in a culture today which is very quick at taking offence. It takes offence at really quite small things often. But actually, if we want to make friends, if we want to get on, we have to learn the ability to be able to look beyond that and to try and look for the good. Then in the next few verses, in verse 13 and 14 and so on, it talks about the importance of a good life, a good life at home, and how difficult it can be if things go wrong. Was it a stupid child is a ruin to her father, and a wife's quarrelling is a continual dripping of rain. It's a kind of lovely, fascinating image there, isn't it? So the importance of keeping good relationships at home, of keeping good, trying to have a good relationship with your children, with your partner and your parents, and so on. So again, that's how difficult things can be. So the importance of of keeping good, as much as you can, keeping good relationships at home as well. Then, of course, in verse 21, one final thing as well. It's about the importance of what lasts in the long run. Because we think as a human race that we're very clever and we make all sorts of plans. And verse 21 says this, the human mind may devise many plans, but it's the purpose of the Lord that will be established. And I suppose I want to say that to the church, really, St. Bart's and also the Church of England and everything else. We need to look to God, because we can come up with all sorts of clever ideas and we can think this is the latest scheme and plan and so on. And I do. We all do. I'm an ideas person. That's what we do. But actually, it's the plans of the Lord which will make us prosper. And it's funny sometimes how an idea which you think is, which you think is fantastic, just goes nowhere. And other sometimes you come up with what's going on here, and actually think things go really, really well. Because ultimately, it's the plans of the Lord, there's the purpose of the Lord that will be established. And we have to trust that God knows what he's doing and that it's his plans that will get us through. Whatever crisis or whatever people may say is going on in the Church of England or whatever, the answer is not by clever schemes. The answer is with God. If we're going to get through this, the way we're going to get through it is through God. And God's saying to us, as Jesus says more than anything else in the Bible, do not be afraid. So let's keep close to God. Let's remember that all is his plans that will prosper. And therefore it's to him that we need to look. So lots of things in this reading this morning. First, the importance of when we come across difficult verses is about reading them again and doing some work and trying to work out for ourselves and reading the context and getting stuck in and reading the chapters again. Secondly, people, the way in verse 3, the way people often blame God, as it says, one's own folly leads to ruin, yet the Lord, yet the heart rages against the Lord. So people blame God today, 'twas ever so. They were doing it then as well. No. Verses 5 and 9 and elsewhere about the importance of telling the truth as opposed to perjury. In verse 8, it's about the importance of being kind. If you want to be kind to yourself, the way to do it is to get wisdom. Verse 11, if you want to keep good friends, the importance of being as much as you can be prepared to overlook offence, not being offended too easily. Good way of keeping friends. And then verse 20, then you've got the importance of keeping a good family life at home, verses 13 and 14, keeping good relationships as much as you can with your children and with your partner and so on. And then at the end, there's this lovely little bit about remembering that it's human beings come up with all sorts of plans, but it's the purpose of the Lord that will be established. Friends, I'm not sure I put that very well, but I hope that makes sense to you. Just read the chapter again. There's loads and loads in this Proverbs chapter 19. Have a lovely day. God bless you. Thanks for watching. Do please share the messages and enjoy your